Even to look at her would let you know that she was mean and she was nasty. Her hair was long and brown and plaited and ran over her shoulders and held in place with rough, shining, thick string. But these eyes, these blue eyes, these clear blue eyes, only let you know the more that there was something wicked inside of her head and her heart. Everyone else inside of the village would not like to have her close, and so it meant that she would climb the tall trees, she would stay in the dark woods and spy on people. She wasn't the strongest of girls. She had a long, short-sleeved, ragged cloth dress, held in place with an old, long leather belt. But she would cook and grow vegetables away from the village. And she loved to cook them until they were as sweet as honey. She was no fool of a girl. She wasn't strong. Her arms were thin and pale, and her fingers were scratched from digging in the dirt. But it was really the way that she would watch others and take things and be separate from everyone else, almost as if she thought that she was better than everyone else. But it was there, as she would look after the animals, for the wild animals liked her. Everything that could creep and crawl, everything that grew and flew, everything upon no legs, 2 legs that slipped and slimed and crept and crawled and slipped and slithered. Oh, she could summon them by her own voice. But as she was there, she could see something or someone in amongst all of the trees, for they swayed in a cold, dark breeze. They swayed and they moved. Oh, she'd been afar away from the villagers, and she'd heard the stories about the Norsemen, those who had come from the north, who would come to this place. Stories had abounded about them, that they had their own religion, that they believed in the way that animals would creep and crawl and walk and grew and flew. She quite liked the idea of them. But now in the darkness, amongst all of the trees, she could see these men with armour at their shoulders and swords in their belts, creeping this way and that in amongst all of the trees. She knew that the smell of the vegetables that she was cooking would warn them that this was a place where there were people, and where there was people, there would be livestock, and there would be gold, and there would be people to kill. The tall trees were now bending in the strong cold wind and the shadows in the darkness, and her being far away from the others, she knew that there was not enough time. If she had had time, perhaps she could have scribed a message, for she was a girl and she could cut into rocks signs, but there was no way that she could get to the others. She smiled to herself. She knew what she would have to do. She took the thick string that tied her hair in its plaits, and it was long and it was strong, and she knew that if she could tie it between 2 trees, then as these men crept and rushed towards the village, then perhaps in their haste they would trip over one another and fall, and the noise that they would make would warn the others. And that was exactly what she did. Now her hair blew in the cold, strong breeze. And yes, sure enough, these men who had travelled many days across the sea to come to this place did trip and fall, and it was then that she summoned all of the animals. Those things with no legs, those things with 2, those things with 6 and 8, that had hard-shelled bodies, ants, frogs, horses, sheep. And she summoned them all to charge towards the men as they lay with their limbs this way and that piled upon each other, intent on killing everyone inside of the village. But with their ways and their belief in all of the beasts of the field, they believed that if the animals would not accept them in this land, then they should return to their home, and that is just what they did. Everyone inside of the village heard the great commotion that these Norsemen had made. When they realised, when they saw the snapped, thick string that they recognised as that had held her hair in place. They knew that they should celebrate her rather than fear her for her spying. For many knew that she would pick fights with them, even though her arms were not strong. And as she sat down at the head of the table in the great longhouse, she watched everyone with their wild and vigorous dancing, and she was given by the chief of the village a small leather strap that she could use to tie her hair in place. And she sat there as if she was the queen of all of these people. She felt warm, calm, relieved that she had saved all of these people who might one day become her friends. She was surprised. She wished that it had always been like this.